Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today is Thursday, September 26th. In today's briefing, I'd like to discuss Japan's circular economy policies. The importance of environmental policies in Japan first came to light during the 1960s and 70s, a time when various forms of pollution had severe impacts on people's health and well-being. While efforts were made to combat pollution, we've now shifted our focus to what has now become one of the biggest environmental challenges of our time, climate change. Alongside measures to combat pollution and global warming, there is another crucial pillar of environmental policy that must not be overlooked. This is the concept of the circular economy, which aims to promote resource circulation and minimize the extraction of new materials and the production of new resources. The question of how to structure an economy where resources are circulated efficiently has become a major policy goal for Japan and the rest of the world. The main focus of today's discussion is to compare Japan's policies with those of the EU, offering insights into how Japan's policies are evolving and where future business opportunities may lie. Now let's dive in and move into my presentation. Japan's journey towards a circular economy began with the enactment of the Law for the Promotion of the Utilization of Recyclable Resources in 1991, a long time ago. This legislation primarily focused on encouraging recycling. One of the major challenges Japan faced at that time was a shortage of landfill sites. Historically, Japan has reclaimed land from the sea, creating industrial zones and used some of these areas for waste disposal. However, as land reclamation slowed down, there was a growing scarcity of landfill space, making waste reduction a critical issue. This is when recycling started to gain attention. The results of these efforts have been noteworthy. Over a 30-year period from 1991 to 2021, Japan managed to reduce its final waste disposal volume from 109 million metric tons in 1990 to 12.34 million metric tons in 2021, outperforming the European Union in this regard. However, recycling in the 1990s mainly targeted large items like refrigerators, air conditioners, and televisions, things that contributed significantly to landfill waste. Therefore, Japan took yet another major leap forward in 1999 by introducing the concept of a circular economy, a policy shift that was among the first of its kind globally. This circular economy vision went beyond just promoting recycling. It aimed at transforming the entire economic system from one based on mass production and disposal to a more sustainable model. This shift introduced the concept of 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, and recycle. While recycling remained important, the emphasis broadened to include reduce, which focuses on decreasing the overall consumption of resources, and reuse, which encourages the continued use of existing products. This was a pivotal moment in 1999, marking Japan's proactive movement towards a circular economy. So then why did Japan decide to eventually shift its policy focus from a narrow emphasis on recycling to the broader 3 Rs, and ultimately towards fundamentally transforming the economic mechanism of mass production, consumption, and disposal? Several factors contribute to this recognition, both domestically and internationally. While the points I will mention are by no means exhaustive, they highlight some key drivers behind this shift. First, there was a global surge in resource demand, particularly due to rapid economic growth of countries across the globe. For instance, China, which had been a net exporter of resources like iron ore, became a net importer. This global resource scarcity meant that Japan faced the concern that it might not always be able to secure the resources it needs as freely as it once did, making more efficient resource use crucial. Another key issue is the uneven distribution of mineral resources. While certain countries are abundant in specific resources, many of these essential materials are concentrated in just a few regions. For example, oil, while now is also extracted in the United States through methods such as shale oil, has traditionally been heavily concentrated in the Middle East. This geographical concentration creates potential supply bottlenecks if there are disruptions from these resource-rich countries. Japan in particular has a very low self-sufficiency rate for resources, as you may already know. Aside from limestone, Japan produces very few critical minerals with almost no domestic production of iron ore or oil. This geographic limitation means that Japan relies heavily on external resources for its vast majority of necessary natural resources. On the environmental front, industries involved in extracting and producing materials like mineral resources are still CO2 intensive. Reducing the need for new materials, whether iron ore or plastics, not only mitigates the strain on global resources, but also reduces Japan's overall greenhouse gas emissions, contributing to the fight against climate change. Given these factors, many of which are constraints shared by other nations as well, it became clear that Japan could no longer rely on the traditional linear economic model of make, use, dispose. Instead, there was a growing need to transition to a circular economic model where resources are reused and recycled within the system, reducing dependency on external supplies and environmental impact. At this point, I'd like to shift our focus to Brussels, the de facto capital of the European Union. The EU have begun to garner significant global attention in recent years for rapidly institutionalizing sector-specific laws as part of its circular economic strategy. Interestingly, while Japan has already made recycling mandatory through legislation before Europe, one of the reasons Japan was ahead in this area was its earlier experience with the issue of landfill shortages. In the past 2 or 3 years, the EU has introduced various regulations on the circular economy, garnering significant attention from global industries. This has also led to the creation of new markets in various ways. One notable initiative is the EU's Circular Economy Action Plan, which was introduced in 2020. Let's first look at the priority sectors outlined in this plan. These include electronic devices, ICT equipment, batteries, vehicles, packaging, plastics, textiles, construction, buildings, food, water, and nutrients, covering a wide range of industries. Now, what exactly is being called for in this action plan? While it's not a law, but rather a policy document, it signals what kind of legislation the EU plans to implement in the future. One of the key directives is the Eco-Design Directive. This unique EU regulation mandates that products must be designed in an environmentally friendly manner. I believe the EU is one of the few, if not the only, region with such a law requiring environmentally responsible product design. Another important aspect is the principle of sustainability, which includes the durability of products, ensuring that they last longer, reusability, promoting the reuse of items, upgradability, allowing products to be upgraded rather than replaced with new ones, and repairability, making sure products can be easily repaired to extend their life. This also ties into resource conservation, as using products for a longer time reduces the need to consume new resources. Additionally, the plan includes the use of recycled materials in products, specifying a minimum percentage of recycled content to promote resource circulation. It also emphasizes the digitization of this data, creating a database to track these efforts. One particularly interesting aspect of this plan is its approach to planned obsolescence, the practice of slightly modifying the design or appearance of a product to make older models seem outdated and to drive new sales. The EU aims to curb this intentional obsolescence, which some might argue conflicts with traditional capitalistic principles. Furthermore, the plan introduces the concept of the right to repair, which originates from the EU. This concept gives consumers the right to repair the products they purchase, asserting their ability to maintain and fix items rather than being forced to buy new ones. This is a new consumer right and an intriguing development in the sustainability movement that I'm sure many of those watching may find very interesting. These are just some of the many important points included in the 2020 Circular Economy Action Plan, and I encourage you to read the full document if you're interested in exploring these ideas further. So let's explore 2 examples of the EU's mandatory regulations related to the circular economy, though they certainly aren't the only ones. As previously mentioned, these regulations span a wide range of sectors from food to textiles. Recently, one notable development has been in the battery regulation area. Battery regulation, which came into effect in 2023, sets clear standards for the recycled materials that must be included in batteries. It requires that materials such as cobalt, lithium, and nickel must be sourced from recycled content. Moreover, for industrial batteries, particularly those with a capacity of 2 kilowatts or more, such as those used in electric vehicles, mandatory compliance will begin in 2031. Another significant area currently garnering attention, including from those within Japan's industrial sector, is the end-of-life vehicle regulation. This regulation, akin to Japan's automobile recycling law, was proposed by the European Commission in 2023. One key focus is the requirement for vehicles to contain at least 25% recycled plastic. As the strength of plastics has increased, their usage in vehicles has also risen. However, this 25% of recycled plastic must not only be sourced from recycled materials, but it also must include an additional 25% specifically from automotive recycling. This means that at least 25% of the recycled plastic must come from materials used in other vehicles. The challenge of meeting these dual 25% requirements is a hot topic in the European industrial sector, and of course, it affects Japanese industries as well. Japanese car manufacturers sell their vehicles in Europe, and many Japanese auto parts suppliers provide components to European OEMs. Consequently, these regulations directly impact their operations, making this an incredibly relevant and closely watched proposal. As I earlier mentioned, Japanese suppliers and manufacturers will be significantly affected by the end-of-life vehicle regulation. This phenomenon can be generalized as an example of the Brussels effect. Legally, EU regulations and directives apply only within the EU borders and have no validity beyond that. However, supply chains extend globally, meaning that the impact of the EU laws reaches around the world. This is the essence of the Brussels effect. Europe represents a high standard market, compelling companies to comply with its regulations. When EU regulations differ from those in other countries, manufacturers face the burden of dual costs. They must separately ensure compliance with the EU regulations and those from the third country. This leads to a situation where, even if vehicles appear similar on the outside, their internal specifications may differ significantly. As a result, there is a constant demand for the industry for a unified approach. Consequently, the trend strongly favors aligning with the EU standards, making it essential for businesses to adapt. Take the GDPR, for example, Europe's General Data Protection Regulation. Now, this exemplifies the Brussels effect. If you may not already know this, the GDPR has become the foundation for personal data protection laws worldwide. Countries must be recognized as compliant with the GDPR, otherwise transferring personal data from Europe to a non-compliant country becomes extremely challenging. Legally, while the GDPR applies only within the EU, its global impact is profound. The penalties for non-compliance are hefty, and the regulation establishes strong privacy rights, particularly affecting major players like GAFA, Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. Given that information circulates globally, companies, including those in Japan, must prioritize and adhere to the GDPR. For example, Facebook has 250 million users in Europe, while Google commands a 90% share of European service marketing. As both are American companies, they are acutely aware of the GDPR and its stringent requirements. This highlights how EU regulations carry significant global implications, underscoring the need for businesses to adapt to these standards. Now let's shift our focus back to Japan. In 2020, Japan released a new circular economy vision, clearly influenced by the EU's circular economy initiatives. The first vision was introduced in 1999, and after 2 decades, the updated version is built upon the importance of the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Initially, these were seen as responsibilities primarily handled by the environmental sector, but the new vision advocates for integrating these practices into core business operations. This shift frames the circular economy as an essential aspect of economic activity rather than merely as an environmental add-on. It's about embedding sustainable practices into business models. This shift is particularly directed toward the venous and arterial industries, which may be terms that are unfamiliar to those outside Japan. This refers to industries that repurpose waste back into the market once a product's life cycle ends, emphasizing the need to develop business models that facilitate this. For instance, as you can see to the right, in the case of the automobile industry, car manufacturers represent the arterial industry, producing new vehicles and introducing them into the market. Meanwhile, car dismantlers or recyclers serve as the venous industry, collecting old vehicles for recycling, thus contributing to the preservation and conservation of the global environment. Another significant aspect of Japan's approach is its emphasis on voluntary initiatives. Rather than imposing strict regulations, the government encourages industries to take proactive measures towards sustainability. This is reflected in the vision's focus on fostering self-driven efforts within the business community. Moreover, it's crucial for investors and consumers to recognize the value of circularity. The impact of circular business models on the bottom line may take time to materialize, requiring a long-term investment perspective. Consumers also need to acknowledge the worth of recycled products and adjust their purchasing behaviors accordingly. Overall, the vision emphasizes resilience. Given Japan's extremely low resource self-sufficiency, creating a system that circulates resources domestically strengthens its resilience against vulnerabilities. This foundational principle was highlighted in the 2020 vision. As time went on, the 2020 vision evolved into a growth-oriented resource autonomy economic strategy, released in 2023. This strategy aims to strengthen the circularity of resource use by promoting both regulatory and technological innovations. Importantly, it also seeks to enhance Japan's economic competitiveness in international markets, reflecting a growth mindset. As previously mentioned, the 2020 vision emphasizes the environmental measures that must be integrated into the economic activities and into the business models as well. The 2023 strategy builds on this by framing an advancement of the circular economy as a key factor in boosting Japan's international competitiveness. This shift represents a significant evolution in policy concepts. The strategy is built on three pillars. First is the establishment of the competitive environment, which includes regulations and rules. While Japan has traditionally relied on voluntary measures, this strategy acknowledges the need for regulations when necessary. Second, there is a focus on policy support for investment and digitization, particularly in adopting circular economy practices. Standardization plays a crucial role here. For instance, it is essential to define the quality of recycled materials. Without standardization, users might find it challenging to work with these materials. In addition, the strategy emphasizes the importance of startups and venture companies as key players in implementing the circular economy, highlighting the need for support for these industries. Lastly, it promotes collaboration between industry, academia, and government, referred to as the Circular Economy Partnership, to deepen partnerships across these sectors. This comprehensive approach aims to create a robust framework for advancing circular economic practices in Japan. Let's discuss the future developments and business opportunities that exist in Japan regarding circular economy practices. While the term recycling is universally recognized, the specific definition of where recycling begins and ends varies significantly. According to the OECD, South Korea leads with a recycling rate of 57%, while Japan lags behind with just 19%. This raises the question, if Japan has historically been a leader in recycling, why does it only achieve a 19% rate? The answer lies in Japan's definition of recycling, which includes energy recovery. So what does that mean? Typically, recycling plastics refers to material recycling, where plastics are processed and reused as plastics. This is the narrow definition of recycling. In contrast, Japan tends to incinerate plastics to harness the energy produced. This energy recovery approach is seen as a form of recycling by Japan, as it utilizes energy that would otherwise require purchasing oil or other resources. When you combine material recycling with energy recovery, Japan appears to have a top-tier recycling rate. However, energy recovery, which does not involve converting materials back to their original form, faces criticism globally. Incineration, of course, results in CO2 emissions. Consequently, Japan must focus on enhancing material recycling. This is essential for truly advancing as a recycling leader. In essence, while Japan may proudly consider itself as a recycling pioneer, OECD data tells a different story. Thus, for Japan to solidify its position as a genuine leader in recycling and in the circular economy, it must establish systems to recycle materials without resorting to incineration. There is significant potential for improvement here. By focusing on enhancing material recycling, Japan can create numerous business opportunities in the recycling industry and in related sectors. This shift towards a more effective circular economy could pave the way for innovative practices and robust growth in Japan's recycling landscape. This encompasses what we refer to as the environmental industry, which is quite broad. It includes sectors focused on natural environment protection, waste treatment and utilization, climate change mitigation, and pollution prevention. A report released by Japan's Ministry of the Environment in 2024 outlines the future outlook for Japan's environmental industry. In 2018, the market size reached approximately 118.8 trillion Japanese yen, reflecting a 4% increase from the previous year and a 1.9-fold growth since the year 2000. Notably, the environmental industry now accounts for over 10% of Japan's total industrial output, demonstrating its significant size. Furthermore, this growth trend is expected to continue, with projections suggesting that the market could reach 135.9 trillion yen by 2050. One of the key areas for growth is resource utilization, which aligns perfectly with the principles of a circular economy. The forecasts indicate a significant expansion in the businesses and market related to the circular economy. These figures illustrate the substantial potential of Japan's circular economy market and highlight exciting opportunities for future development in this sector. The Japanese government is not standing still. It is actively working alongside experts to further develop initiatives. Although I won't touch upon any of the committee meetings shown in this slide, it's noteworthy that throughout 2024, multiple sessions of the Resource Circulation Economy Subcommittee have convened. In fact, just earlier in this past June, the interim summary on institutional revisions for achieving a growth-oriented, resource-autonomous economy was published. We can expect to hear more updates on the aforementioned growth-oriented resource autonomy economic strategy as the government continues to focus on enhancing and refining legislation and systems related to the circular economy in the coming years or even in the coming months. In conclusion, it has become increasingly clear that the circular economy, initially emphasized for its economic and environmental aspects, is evolving into a mainstream driver for economic growth and significant business opportunities. Both Japan and the EU share a common set of values and policy objectives in this regard. However, their approaches to engaging businesses and encouraging participation in the circular economy have some interesting differences. Many people have likely heard of the concept of a circular economy as it has gained substantial traction. Yet, when it comes to specific actions, policies, and business practices, there remains much room for improvement. For example, recycling rates and how much recycled material is utilized poses significant challenges within the global supply chain. Japan's journey began in 1999, focusing on resource circulation and recycling. And while it's been about 25 years since then, policies continue to evolve and new opportunities for businesses are emerging. Although Japan started this initiative early, its progress has been somewhat slower compared to the EU, leading to a sense that Japan has been overtaken. However, this gap also presents opportunities for growth and innovation. As I discussed Japan's circular economic policies with reference to the EU, I want to emphasize again that this represents a significant market transformation, opening up substantial opportunities for businesses. If you are considering a new project in this field, Langley Esquire is here to help you. Please give us a call. Thank you very much for listening. Please continue to stay tuned.